what's going on, everybody? I want to welcome you to the Legacy Levels podcast. I have three amazing guests with me, and today we are talking about the business behind the jersey. Everybody wants brand deals. Everybody wants a brand. Everybody wants to be a brand. But we're here to educate you guys on what it is to either take on those brands and to be a walking brand, or how to tell your stories, right? So outside of that, I'm going to introduce my guests, and we're going to get to it. We're here to educate, and I really want you guys to understand that, look, take what we're saying and learn from it. Don't take it and be convicted, because that's all we're here to do. We're just here to educate. So my first guest, I got my man, Delegate. He's a Cary City native, former NIU football player. I went to Central Michigan, so we rivals a little bit, but that's my guy. He is a former athlete turned brand strategist. 15 years in sales, marketing, and community impact. He's founded a sports entertainment group. I got my guy, Rah. He's another South Florida native. He's a designer and a brand strategist. And he's the creative director of Eye of Rah. That's RKH. I got my man, Charles Stewart, over there. Appreciate you coming. He's a Broward County native, former college professor, wealth manager, author. We're going to talk about that, and NFL agent. So thank you guys for coming in, man. Appreciate you for having us. Sir. So one thing I want to say, right, the business behind the jersey. My first question to all of you, we're going to start at the beginning and come to the end. When you hear about brand in 2025, what does that really mean for an athlete, and how early should that mindset start?
So when I think of brand, I think of self-awareness, and I think of self-evaluation, because the first thing you need to think about is, what do I think about? Right. What brands do I use every day? What brands do I want to use? What brands am I not familiar with? And then more importantly, what brands do I want to associate with? So I think when it comes before the contract or before the offer, before anything, self-evaluation, self-awareness, and having a self-perspective on what I like, what I'm interested in, and what do I want to be a part of.
I think the first thing that I consider when I think about brand in 2025, when it talks about athletes, is understanding that your brand is your story.
Yes, sir.
And explaining to athletes that brand is the story behind a product. And if you're going to become a brand, that means you understand that you are a product. And when we're speaking about what age that should begin, I believe in children being children, right? Yeah. So I don't approach players when they're in high school. I at least want them to be 18 plus in college, so they got to experience childhood. Because when you start to become a brand, now it's a business. Mm-hmm. And now the conversations that you have are different. The meetings are different. The contracts are different. All of this stuff changes. And I want your brain to be developed to a certain place to understand that.
Yeah, when I think of brand, I think of emotion. I think of identity. And I also think of product in the same sense as Charles and Ross said. And how early this just started around the commercialization age, so about 16, 18. In a way of which you have some sort of influence, and some sort of economic background, or some sort of impact, some money that you can make a purchase towards your decision.
Right, absolutely.
Great, Coach. Let's pod. Can we pod?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Rah, what I think about athletes, right, you said like kids be kids, but when I think about the athlete journey is you can't do this at 50. You can't do this at 60 when the average entrepreneur is actually at their peak. So what I tell kids is you're 10, but you got to add 10 years to your lifespan where your current mindset age is at. So when you're 11, you're really 21. When you're 18, you're really 28. So I think we got to, cut the veil and the coddling, honestly, in my opinion. And we got to address stuff for what it is, because the landscape has changed. When we were growing up as kids, yeah, you could be a kid because there was no commercialization. But now 10-year-olds can get brand deals. 8-year-olds can get brand deals. We see Coco Lemon on YouTube making more than all of us net worth, respectfully.
Definitely.
So I think it's a different conversation. So I always think we're in a different time span. And I think anytime you're thinking about athletes, I think you got to add 10 plus years to where your current age is. Because like I said, the average athlete career is what? 8 to 38 if you're blessed.
Yeah, I respect that. And my only rebuttal to that would be, as someone who was an athlete at an early age and went into the art sphere, I would say that we have to understand, especially when we're dealing with black players, what their reality is like, and how they're being attacked on all sides, socially, economically, and then on that field. We don't want, specifically football, to become a plantation, right? And I don't want to become another master. When I'm dealing with players, the reason I like to start when they are in their 12th grade year, headed into college, is because I'm not just going to be the person that's over your brand or that's designing for you. I become a mentor. We start to have conversations about your mental health, where you are as a person. And I want their brain to be developed in a place that they can understand that this isn't a rape and pillage operation. You know what I'm saying? But that's how that field can be.
Right.
And that's what sports can become. It can become their God in a sense.
Yeah.
I'm not here to add to that problem. What I'm here is to create a solution and provide them another source of income that is completely controlled by them and by who they are in their identity.
Well, let me say this. Do you guys think that the brand, when I think about brands, right, because I'm an ex-football player, and after football, I had nothing. I didn't have nothing I can transition to, had nothing, no relationships really, which was my fault. No relationships I can go to because I really didn't understand myself. I didn't even know what my brand was. I just knew football. And we talked about that yesterday, how dangerous that is. And for me, what I think branding is, it's about who you are outside of the helmets and shoulder pads, since we're talking about football, right? Like, who am I? Do I like to cook? We talk about that. Do I like to cut hair? And then while you're in your career, whether it's college, high school, whatever it is, you should be building relationships with those people that which really is the true you, who I think for real. Because right now, that's a cape. That helmet and that shoulder pad, that's a cape. You ain't Clark Kent. Like, who is Clark Kent? And if I build relationships because I like to cook, that way, while I'm in my career, when off season's off, I'm doing cooking shows. I could sell a cookbook. You know what I mean? We talked about that. So, because what we talked about yesterday was so profound. I think what branding is who you truly are outside of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And who you are while you're playing. That's what's going to help get you those deals, because everybody want to deal with you at that time.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. So my next question, you guys, is, we can cut that out. You know, what is the early steps of a young athlete and creator? Like, what steps should they take right now, real time, to start their brand? Like, what are some things they can do? Rah.
So starting right now, no matter where you are in your career as an athlete, whether you were in 10th grade, 12th grade, 9th grade, first thing first is to get your story down. Who are you? What are you about? What are the things that you like? What are the things that you've experienced? That's your story. And then understand that your story is separate from your identity. Your identity is what has developed from that collection of stories, right? Let's identify those two components. And then the brands that you approach will be based on those things. What do you like other than football? Like he spoke about, is it cooking? You know, are you an artist? Do you like to skateboard? Do you play baseball outside of football? It could be another sport. What are the things that you like to do outside that make up your identity? And then we take your story, attach that to an identity, and that becomes a brand.
And even to piggyback off that, I think specifically with the sports entertainment group, we help to clarify a lot of those things, because you may have had that aha moment at 28, where if we're having a lot of these conversations a lot sooner, 16, 18, then now they understand that every purchase is an influence towards the things that are going to be remarketed back to you. And an email, a contact, a login, like these are all things that gather data of your psychographics, your demographics, and all the things that are important. So at the sports entertainment group, we ask those questions up front in our intake process. So we send an assessment and we say, hey, who are you? What brands do you wear? What feelings do you feel? What athletes do you follow? When you are getting ready for the game, who are you listening to? Because all of these things make up that identity. It makes up those different categories that would help to now, now it's a KPI for us, which means it's a key performance indicator. Now we can use those insights and that data towards now building you a profile. So once we build you a profile, then we start to get into the other stages of it, which, just at a high level, doing more of a deep dive, more of a discovery. So, in brevity, I think, for us, that's what we try to help athletes discover, athletes, entertainers, and even brand partners, because as much of these programs is for the athletes, they're also for those corporations, because corporations are looking for those insights. If I have a Chick-fil-A and I'm coming into a new environment, I have to survey the land to see if my customer is even there. So we do that on both sides. And I think that, much to what Rah was saying earlier, all of these perspectives go and add up into making that identity for yourself. So you have to really understand that in that part of the process, we'll be your partners and helping guide you through that.
Yeah, before I go to Charles, I'm gonna say this: we know where we ain't gonna find no Chick-fil-A at. Yeah, there's certain areas, but that's understand. You understand your crowd. But Charles, you want to go elaborate on that, bro?
The first thing, get comfortable on the camera. Get comfortable on the camera.
Talk about it.
Can you look at the camera and can you smile? Can you be engaging?
Yeah.
Right? Are y'all paying attention to what you actually stop and watch? So I think before you even go with the brands and all that, do a whole bunch of takes on TikTok, on your Instagram camera, on your, on the hottest videographer or photographer. Do takes on there. Get comfortable on the camera, having a personality, learning how to smile. Even if you don't have to talk articulate like me, but you know what I'm saying? Just know how to use the camera and make it your best friend. Get comfortable when that red dot comes on. You ready to go. You can smile, you can engage, because that's really the main thing, right? Are you entertaining, right? You're entertaining on the field, on the court, on the track, on the whatever, but can you entertain, when we're scrolling? Can you make me stop and be like, wait, what are you selling? What are you talking about? What game you playing? So I think that's the main thing, is getting comfortable on the camera.
But I'm gonna go ahead and double back on that, because like I said, it's a couple times where I see some interviews with some of these high school athletes, and it's cringe to watch, because a lot of times they still got their shiesty mask on and they talking, they mumbling words, and it's like, nah, man, like you can't do that. You have to step out of that mindset, because where you're going, you can't hang on to that. You know what I mean? And then when you start to get in every level, it requires a new version of you. Yes, in high school, you still may be a little bit immature, but when you start to get to college, man, you got to learn how to talk more. When you go to the NFL, you better know how to talk. It's just a part of growing up. We can't stay in that young mindset forever. You play football. You're not in the rap industry. This is an industry where you have to be able to articulate whole conversations, be able to have more people put money behind you because you sound like you're smart and you sound like you can explain a brand to other people. So it's no direct hit. We understand that some of y'all grew up in some environments, but that shouldn't stay with you forever. You know what I mean? Because you're trying to grow away from those environments. So I completely agree with what you got going on and what you're saying. But I want to transition to this. When an athlete thinks that they are bigger than the program, because you get some athletes that's making money. You know what I mean? Look at the quarterback from UM making bank. When an athlete thinks he's bigger than the program, how do we navigate that? You as his manager or you as the parent, like, I guess let me ask it this way: when an athlete thinks he's bigger than the program, how do we address that? How do we talk to him about that? What things do we say? How do we go about that?
So years ago, you guys can remember Charles Barkley. He said, "I'm not a what do you say? I'm not a role model." Mm-hmm. When in reality, as an athlete, you are a product of your community. So whether you like it or not, you are. You represent that community, whether you want to adhere to it or not. But in instances where an athlete feels like they're bigger than a program or bigger than a brand deal, or they're owed this, they need that one or two people that's around them. For me, it was my nana and my uncle. Mm-hmm. But you need those people that will be able to bring you back down. Right. And I think that you especially when it comes to brand deals and like really risking something like that, as much as you're playing for the name in the front, you're playing for the name in the back. You're also playing for those other brands that are utilizing you to represent them as well. So you got to really start to think about that. Mm-hmm. You have to really build, your advising board of like 3 or 4 people that are around you that can actually hone you in, mm-hmm. one, to looking for your best interest, but then also, two, as a business manager, has that relationship with them that they can actually bring you back. Right. Especially in that type of relationship.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess let me say this before I go to Rah and Charles. I guess the reason why I'm asking this, I seen a college game last week, Saturday, and the team actually lost. And one of the players, right after the loss, he posted something on the story like, "Hey, I need some models for tomorrow because I'm trying to shoot for this brand I got." And I'm like, hold up, you just lost, and now you're out here promoting a brand, or you're out here promoting, your Neil, whatever it is. And I'm like, how do we handle that? You as a teammate, or you as a coach, like, how do you deal with that?
Yeah. What I think is important for me to say is that my business is very new, mm-hmm. right? So my exposure to players is very new, mm-hmm. Especially players at a high level. Mm-hmm. I went from designing for other companies to deciding that I want to give players opportunity to have a brand themselves. What you'll find with you guys who are my seniors who I look up to, is that when it's someone else's brand, their relationship with it is very different than when they sit down with me and I make something for them.
Very true. Very true.
This is yours. So now how you represent it and how much revenue comes in from it is directly indicative of those KPIs and the time that you put in. When you start to give them something that's connected to them, that might have Nana's picture on it, or we took a picture of your block, we edited it up and turned it into a T-shirt, and you want to represent that a certain way, you'll see behavioral changes. Now, if it's Nike or it's Reebok or it's Hellstar or one of these brands,
There's brands that feed into that too.
because Hellstar specifically has been doing NIL deals recently.
Yeah.
And Hellstar,
It's a business too.
yeah, but it's a kind of rocker brand-esque. It's kind of rebel. It's got that energy to it, right? So they're going to feed into that. So now, okay, I take that and this is a T-shirt that Nana want to wear. This is a T-shirt your mama want to wear. This is a T-shirt your homeboys are rocking. Your relationship with that becomes different. And that's why it's so important to create these spaces where we have these types of conversations and they have access to this information. And we can say, hey, I can sit down with you and say, hey, okay, you have these players, right? And they have these issues. Yeah. Okay. Now, when we go towards their brand, and you might have a player who has ADHD. Right now, when we start developing their brand and what foundations we want to attach them to, now they have a responsibility that they never knew. They never knew they had power.
Yeah.
Like that. So their responsibility connected to that brand changes their behavior.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So what I think in this situation when a player is, bigger than the program, I think let's have a conversation. Let's hear your thoughts. Let's hear because there's always a why, right? There's always a why behind the way that we act. Nothing's ever just out of the thin air. There's no coincidences. Everything starts with a foundation and a why. So I think it's because the whole thing, right, when people see podcasts, when little kids see podcasts, like, my big brother talking at me, right? Instead of, let's hear you out so we can make sure you understand that I'm talking to you. I'm not talking at you. So I think in order for us to get their ear, for them to want to understand, because that's the key too, right?
Yeah.
I don't give a damn. You could have Johnny Cochran, name whatever lawyer, but if I'm tuned out, it don't matter. I'm not listening, and actually I'm going to go complete opposite. So I think it starts with, first, let's hear your side of the story. Let's hear what you think. Let's hear why you feel like you want to act this way. And then once we understand how they feel, why they feel that way, and then let's learn like who around you, told you like this is a good way to think, And then once you gather all that information, going back to what you're saying, KPIs, all right, now I can have a more targeted conversation, but more importantly, damn, homie, listen to me. You actually heard my opinion before just interjecting and saying what you got to say, like a parent. You know what I'm saying? So I think you got to listen to that person first, and let's hear their side of the story, right? Because there's three sides, right? Their story, my story, and the truth.
I think reminding individuals that they're also replaceable.
Yeah.
Like I come from the theater background. I went to school and, I did Broadway, did off Broadway, and we understood that there was an understudy. We understood that you sneeze, you late to practice, whatever. There's somebody that's waiting, he's hungry, and he's thirsty to be in that spot. He knows every line that you know. He might not deliver it as well as you do. That's why you're here. And I think that can translate to the world of athletes. Remembering that only 2% of you take it to that final level, and there's always another kid waiting for your spot. Reminding them of that reality that, yeah, you're good, but there's always somebody better or just as good.
Right.
So we got to position you to win.
Right.
And even greater to that, just to wrap it, there's like everybody aren't getting NIL deals. So the expectation of I show up and I get a deal is not a real thing. Yeah. Even to the point of what you were saying, I'm bigger than the program, sir. There's others. Someone's more articulate when someone's ready to do the work. Someone has an agency, and that's where we come in, right? They have someone that's able to position them to get those deals because of the fashion element, from a speaking element, from a sports training element. We all have been there before. So now we're big bro trying to come in and get back to you.
Right.
you got to look at this differently, you know, and it all exists, but even of the 100 people that are there, it's probably 10 to 15% that are getting a portion of what they're worth.
Correct.
And even less than that getting nothing. So you got to think about it in those types of ways as well.
Right. And I think, when it comes to that, it comes with a responsibility too.
Absolutely.
I think, a lot of these athletes, they just want to collect money and do them and be me. I'm going to be me and I'm going to do what I do and I'm going to get this money and that's all I'm worrying about. It's like, no, bro, it comes with a responsibility. You know what I mean? You can't be out here losing and then on the next page, you talking about, bringing in models and stuff like that's just, because the NFL is looking at that. They're looking at as soon as we pay him this money, this is how he's going to act. I'm telling you, that's what Jerry Jones going through right now, and I'm going to tell you right now, I could tell you that's why he didn't want to pay Michael Parsons. Not to get political and not to get to the NFL. Granted, these players earned this money, but he's like, look, I done paid this guy, I done paid this guy, I done paid this guy. None of them panned out. So now you want me to come back and come out my pocket and pay you all this money, which I feel like Michael Parsons is worth it. But it's just like, you got to look at from Jerry Jones' aspect. And I'm not a big fan of his, but I get it. It's like, man, I done paid all y'all money. We can't even make the playoffs.
Or is it the fact that Michael Parsons is really outspoken and the other players that he's paid, they don't podcast, they don't YouTube, they don't vlog.
Very much so.
They don't
That's a
speak
great
their
point.
mind.
That's a great point.
They don't do none of that.
Yeah.
And Jerry Jones kind of went into it as well, too. He started kind of manipulating the media a little bit from that perspective, too. So I really get what you're saying.
So he's saying, I am the program.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am the paycheck provider.
Yeah.
You know?
Because you can tell he's old school because he always talk about that handshake. I don't know if y'all heard that handshake, the handshake. But Jerry got to understand he's dealing with a new wave of players. Back in the day, you had these secret conversations with these guys and nobody talked about it because the Cowboys had a lot of things internally going on. Like we just found out that Michael Irvin, he physically armed somebody. I ain't gonna say what it was. But now you got players and they got these podcasts and everybody's outspoken. So a lot of times people feel they feel kind of played. Like, man, okay, you want to talk that craziness? We're gonna trade you.
It's interesting. So, being, again, new to this field and dealing with players in college and in pro sports and understanding that, hey, if you're in the NBA, you're not getting a direct percentage on your jerseys or on the merchandise that's sold with your face on it or your name on it, or understanding how it's structured in the NFL as well.
License.
I have trouble feeling bad for the conglomerate. I have trouble feeling bad for the company because, yeah, you played these players and maybe you didn't make the playoff, but you made your money back. You did.
And then
By virtue of them being on the field. And the percentage of what they're getting back based on how much they're risking their bodies and through this physicality, it's always the disparity. So where my business comes in and you guys as well, and we're developing these brands, we're giving them access to income that's outside of what they're doing on that field.
Yeah.
And that will outlast what they're doing on that field. So I have trouble feeling bad for the man who's cutting the check because he's making 10x that. And if that kid goes out there and he tears his ACL or he hits his head too hard and he can't play no more, you still gonna make a good amount of money for the rest of the season, even if he's not on the field. So I have trouble feeling bad for
A lot of people understand the after effects of football players that they go through. God rest his soul, Rudy Johnson just committed suicide. He was a running back, so he took a lot of pounding to the head, and we don't know if it was CTE related. We don't know what he was going through, but it's like, once these guys take them shoulder pads off, man, a lot of these guys struggle because they don't know who they are. But I want to transition to, and Charles, you can start off with this one. Have you ever ran into any kid that signed like a bad deal, or what should people look for when getting into contracts, that big C word, right? What are some of the things they need to look for, be cautious of, hop on? Can you take us through that process?
So NIL, not necessarily, but it's actually a trending verdict in LA or California where there's this company that paid Fernando Tatis $2 million for 10% of his future contract earnings for the next 25 years.
Ooh.
For 10% of his future contract earnings for 25 years. And it just came down the ruling that California was like, yeah, that's good. That's a good deal. So the guy's already made roughly $80 million. So now that company gets $8 million.
Yeah.
Right? We're just playing simple numbers. So I think that is a landmark, agreement. And this is the same company where they did a deal with a University of Florida football player, and they did the same type of arrangement.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And he's suing, but now based on that verdict, now you got precedent. So now it might not be looking too good for that young man.
Yeah.
So I think, one, it starts with self-education.
Yep.
Like accountability, right? That's the thing, because the unspoken thing about athletics and kids that are athletes, adults that are athletes, is that it's a coddling industry.
Yeah.
Everybody around you wants to be your crutches. They want you to have to rely on them and not empower you, not educate you to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And you got to call the business guy. You got to call this guy. You got to call that guy. That guy, that girl, that woman, around you. So I think it starts with self-education. Mm-hmm. If you notice everything I'm talking about, before you do any solutions, self, accountability, looking in the mirror for real, not looking with no filter, and seeing what's going on and taking the accountability. Because like I said, as an athlete, you got to add plus 10 to everything that you're doing. Mm-hmm. You're 14, you're really 24. Mm-hmm. What would a 24-year-old be doing in their career right now?
Mm-hmm. I think what's interesting is that coming from this table and coming from the communities that we come from, we love these sports, but we have love for these players too. Yeah. A lot of these companies don't have any love for these players, so they're not intent on educating them or intent on providing them that information. And when we're talking about, good or bad deals, I think it's important for every player to understand you get what you negotiate.
Sure.
Simple as that. Once you, if you didn't read that paper and you signed it, now you got to go through those battles, but that's a bed that you made. Yeah. And it reminds me of the music industry. Because like I said, I came from, doing clothing and merchandising in the music industry. These rappers, they come up and they have their posses and they all feeding them, hey, I got a camera I can do over here. I got this. You don't want to be the crutches. They want to be a part of the journey, but they're going to tell them everything you put out is amazing. And it's so important to tell them, hey, this might not be that great, right? And when we need to go back in the studio, we need to do it again. And so from our chairs and the things that we do with these athletes, me specifically, I think that it's so important to sit down and have those, really holistic conversations and get them to understand that, what the opportunity is when developing a brand for themselves, separate from rushing to sign any contract, but they're hungry. Yeah. A lot of them, just like these rappers, they're coming from communities where they never had no money. They don't know what money can do or what opportunities it can open. And I'm telling you, hey, maybe don't sign that yet. Hey, let's go over here and make something for yourself. And this is your money that you're bringing in. And then when these deals come, you're not starving. So we can sit and you can negotiate, or you can have a gentleman like you or a gentleman like you sitting at the table with you so you can negotiate. And you got money coming in already. You done had this brand since college. It's moving. You got a little bread. So now that this paper comes across the table, you can redline a couple things because you're not starving.
Mm. Yeah. So to that end, from an NIL perspective, was what you asked before, a bad deal has everything to do with equity, like signing away your own personal intellectual property. Mm-hmm. So NIL, for people that don't know, is name, image, and likeness. So my name, my image, like a picture of me, or my likeness. So for instance, Jumpman equals Jordan. Yeah. So any deal, and there's been a lot of bad ones, especially in high school, since name, image, and likeness is now approved in the state of Florida. Georgia's about 36 or 37 states. So not only are they having the professional problems, they're having the collegiate problems with this, and then now it's in grassroots, which makes it even greater and bigger. We see these examples with the 7-on-7 teams. There's a deal for the NIL. There's an NIL deal for the 7-on-7 team, and then the brand has a deal with the kid, but then the kid goes to one of the shoe brands schools.
Yeah, for sure.
So now it's a disparity on trying to navigate that. And then also, too, if we go back and look at Marvin Harrison Jr. and Marvin Harrison, they have a big thing with Fanatics going on right now, and I'll leave that to you guys to look that up. But from allegedly what it looks like is that it was an NIL deal, and I think at that time it was early in his career before he reached the pro ranks. And again, don't Google it for yourself, but don't quote me. But they're saying that it had something to do with his future earnings, his name, image, and likeness, them owning it. So we have to really, anytime we have clients, anytime we have partners, anytime we have athletes or businesses that are interested in these types of ordeals, whether it be representing a nonprofit organization or their sports or sports training business, we really have a 3-step process of this. Hey, who are some of you? Who's your audience? Do you know your audience? Okay, let's start there. Because a lot of people are selling and they don't know who they're selling to. They don't have the research, they don't have the data, they don't have the insight, and they're really just selling to whoever likes them, which is great.
Yeah.
You didn't that far, but when it comes back to signing bad deals, we want to be that arm for you in these business conversations. As the sports entertainment group, like we want you to think about us when you think about sports and entertainment coming together in these types of commercials.
And I understand everybody's point because I know, what they're ultimately saying is, you got to educate yourself.
Yeah,
Absolutely. What you're saying is, hey, man, do your research, get the right people. Like my analogy, right, is, if a squirrel and a bird was on a branch, right, the squirrel is in trouble. The bird, he's good because if that branch was to fall, the bird could fly. That's because he equipped himself. He's equipped for it. You got to educate yourself. You got to be ready for that, or have people around you that's ready for that. Don't be the squirrel, because the moment that deal goes bad, you done.
Yeah.
And that's why we sitting at this table, we provide that squirrel with wings.
Yeah.
That's because
That's true. Yeah.
that deal go bad. Guess what? We sat at the table. We provided you with enough ways for you to make income, and you walk off that field today.
Yeah.
All that audience that we identified and that brand and merchandise that we created for you, that's going with you.
Yeah.
That's when that paper comes across the table and he's sitting there he knows, okay, this isn't forever. Boxers know they have a certain number of years.
Yeah.
Football players know they have a certain number of years if perfect things happen. Track athletes know they have a certain number of years if everything happens the way it needs to. And you guys who've been in the business longer than me, you know what those, numbers are. And so coming in and sitting with these players, that's why you got to love what you do. That's why you got to love these players as well, more than yourself, because a lot of them are not going to self-educate. A lot of them coming out of high school and going into college saying, I just want to play football, bro. I don't want to think about that. I just want to play football, bro.
Yeah.
And talking how we talk, they don't know that what our pasts are and how we may be able to identify with them. And so, having those conversations, making that connection, and then giving them that education where they may have been lacking is a part of the passion of the business.
Yeah.
I think we got to make sure we don't lose.
Yeah, but you know what's crazy, and I'm going to say this, because I sometimes I get exhausted, and I'm going to just be honest with you, because I think, culturally, like, this is stuff that we need to know. If sports is going to be, because let's be real, we dominated sports culturally, right? But it's like, I feel like we are switching up the ways we talk. It's like we keep beating a dead horse on telling our kids, like, hey, you need to grow up. You need to understand brands. You need to read. You need to surround parents. You need to start doing this stuff for your kids. So culturally, I feel like, man, it's getting exhausting. Like, when are we going to step up and start to take this stuff serious? Because I feel like we messing around with it. Because too many athletes are signing bad deals when there's a bunch of examples of guys going through it. So when are we going to educate ourselves, grow the hell up, and let's really take this thing by the horns and let's start doing right by ourselves?
I think we need to meet each other where we are too.
Yeah.
Like, we have to break the
How do we?
We have to break that by just a conversation.
Yeah.
We're here today because of you. And I said this
sure.
off camera, but this is your ministry.
Yeah, for sure.
And you chose to collide worlds with us. And then not just that, you chose the follow-up.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's something in the follow-up,
Yeah.
and when you're doing these things, if you don't know, don't be afraid to ask.
That's right.
Hey, Jerry, man, I wear hats and glasses. Bruh, you got to help me find a hat and glasses store. It just makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of people aren't just there just to be there, And I think that a lot of times we feel like asking is like weakness, and it's not. And we feel like going with someone that looks like us, like, what is he trying to do? Like, we kind of always looking over our shoulder. And I think, in some cases it may make sense to, nudge a little more, but in some cases, if it's just completely gone, man, you just got to do away with it, man.
So I think it also comes down to big conversation, right? In athletics with kids, everything is, these kids act like this, or these kids are entitled. My whole thing is, who's raising these kids?
It's adults.
Who's the one upbringing these kids?
It ain't the new generation.
Who Kids can't raise themselves,
They can't.
right? So we are a product of what we see, not even what we hear, right? We are a product of what we see. So I think it comes down to actions. And if we all just start in our own individual households, and we, take accountability, and that's what I'm saying too, like, let's be real, South Florida, we don't have OGs, we have old guys. Who's coming back and giving game? Who, all these top athletes and who's the one, you'll never hear an athlete down here say, yo, OG from the 90s or the 80s or the 2000s, you know what I'm saying? He came and told me this and that and that and this, or I had phone calls with yada, because going back to ego and pride, right? When we get burned, we don't even tell the younger generation, this is how I got burnt.
Yeah.
It's after the fact. Oh, damn, they got you too, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, damn, yeah, that happened. That's part of it.
That goes back to not being afraid to ask for help, or, hey, this is unfamiliar, It's kind of like a catch-22.
But it's also, how you going to ask for help if you've never seen nobody around you ever ask for help?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
as smart as we are as humans, we're just a bunch of programs and algorithms put together.
Yeah.
When going back to your analogy of the kids and like let kids be kids, but at some point we got to act like other, cultures. Other cultures, look up what a bar and bat mitzvah is and what it really means.
Yeah, becoming an adult, right?
At 13, 12,
Manhood.
look up podcasts and like look up entrepreneurs and founders and the successful ones and like look up how they treat their kids.
To your point, I think that, first of all, in our businesses, we're all entrepreneurs, right? Adding structure to our businesses that provides, the players that we work with access to, that education, and dealing with their parents. Because to his point, when we look at other cultures, because, again, my business is new, so I can give you guys fresh data, right? Working with players in lacrosse or Caucasian players, I'm talking to their mothers and fathers. Point blank period. I'm going to their house. We're sitting down. We're having a conversation. This is what I do. This is what I want to create for your child, right? Unfortunately, a lot of times when I'm talking to players in our community, I'm either talking to one parent or no parent, right? And that's where now I have to go in a different direction over here than I do over here, because they understand that their child is a product already. They love them, yeah, but they understand that they're a product.
Yes.
And that they're going to go into this field that product is now going to be pushed to a wider audience. So the conversations are just different. The things that I have to bring to the table and the depth of information that they need over here is lower than what's needed over here. The time, they understand, oh, okay, cool. Oh, he's going to get his own brand. Okay, he's going to make this. Okay, this is how the percentages break down. They understand what they're looking at. These parents on this side, on our side of the table, need education as much as their children do. And, trying to figure out, because, again, I'm going to need some help with this, trying to understand how to build that into a business has been a challenge to me, as a new entrepreneur. Like, how do I teach your mom and dad that us making this, getting you even 1% of a $3 billion business, they don't understand what that means. But over here, hey, if your child gets even 1% of $3 billion a year on T-shirts, there's nobody that can knock on his door and get him into a bad deal, because he's already got money coming in.
Yeah.
How do we do that is another key question in all of this, because we're just talking about the players, but it starts at home.
Yeah.
What did I just sign? Why do you think I wrote this? Right? Because I'm in this industry, and like, to your point, I've been struggling, and I realized, damn, nobody's comprehending what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Real talk. And everybody's and nobody's asking questions. But even if they ask questions, if I tell them the answer, they don't comprehend the answer, because adulting is what I call it. Who teaches adulting? No high school. I went to all the private high schools. I went to Chaminade and St. Thomas. They're not teaching you how to become an adult.
Right.
Sorry, respectfully. I went to University of Florida, Florida State, UCF, just not UM because, it's private school, but I went to all these top institutions. They're not teaching you how to be an adult, respectfully. All these top institutions, whether it be universities or college, what are they teaching you? What they're not even telling us? Networking. That's all that they're teaching you is networking and the power of being around a certain type of people. So that's why I made this, to make it visually clear and give context, give analogies that make sense, but also break down the key components of being an adult and being, handling adult responsibilities in America. Because at the end of the day, we're all deciding to play this game, the American game. We're blessed enough to where if you want, you can go and play the Caribbean game. You can go play the South African game. You can go play the South American game, the East Asian game, the Western Asia game. But if you're going to stay here in America and play this game, then to all of our points, we got to take accountability and know the rules to the game.
Yeah. And I want to add, and I think, you just got to stop being so much about football too, because and when you go to these parks, right? So I'll go visit a park and I watch them practice. And it's about give me a rough number, about 200-300 kids out there. Yeah. Everybody's preaching NFL. Everybody's preaching hard work. Everybody's preaching football, but nobody's preaching like just being, like you said, an adult, or living a regular life, or getting a decent job, being a software engineer, being a product manager, being a marketing agent, being a designer. Like, everything is just football. And then at the end of the day, when football don't work, all this time that we missed to develop these kids in that, because we had them when they're young. That's when their brains are the best. That's when they're sponges. They can receive all of this information. But by the time they get 18, they kind of burnt out with football because it became a year-round sport now. So I think what we should do in these NFL guys, when y'all come back, it shouldn't just be one camp a year. Like, nah, man, come and tell these kids what it is. Like, hey, it's a dirty game. Hey, look, there's so many other things that you can do in this sport. You know what I mean? You could be, you could be a athletic trainer. You can be a publicist. You can be a PR. Like there's more things than just being on the field and being a man. And I think that's what our culture teaches our kids. You got to be the man. It's like, nah, bro, sometimes you got to be the sidekick. Not everybody going to make $1 million, but you can make $100K a year and live good. You can make $150 a year and be good. Like, you don't have to be $1 million. It shouldn't be $1 million a note. It shouldn't be, I make it, get rich or die trying. Like, nah, bro, like we can't do that. Because some of y'all going to die trying more than you're going to get rich. So that's what I think culturally what we need to do is just stop forcing the football narrative. Let's get these kids and let's identify what they're good at and let's put them out in the world a better way, So that's just my stance on it.
No, I agree. I think as a culture, we position football as the gateway to success for some of these kids.
Sports, yeah.
I'm sorry, but I got to say this. How many young designers do we have that's at that age that we can capitalize? Like, because some of these kids are gifted at 8, 9, 10 years old, and they could be just like you.
I mean, I'll speak from my experience. My dad played football.
Yeah.
Fayetteville State. Football was his life, until he ultimately injured himself. But when my little brothers were coming up, I didn't grow up in my dad's household. I met my dad when I was in high school, when I was in 11th grade. So by that time, I'd have been in trouble, and then, Miami, right? You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was like, I didn't really get close to football specifically because my dad was all football. So while my little brothers could paint, they could do all these other things, they had to play football because that's all he knew. And that's what, for him, he felt like their lives would be better if they stayed in football. And if you look at them today, only one of them is going to college on football. The rest of them hate football.
Yeah.
But as a culture, we've positioned football from the time that they're yay big.
It's a dangerous game.
As all, listen, this gonna take care of Nana, this gonna take care of Mama, this gonna take care of everybody. Just do this thing.
Sports.
And then
sports
or music.
Just sports or music.
Sports or music. Bam, 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 over and over again.
Do the numbers. Yeah. How many black people can be in those industries?
It's baseball pays well too.
Yeah, buddy.
So does soccer.
And we used to own it back in the day. Did you notice you don't even have baseball players making shoes anymore? Like back then you had the King Grippies. You had the Frank Thomases.
They're not buying that.
We were so marketable.
Yeah.
But I key in on football specifically because it's a blood sport.
Yep.
And the aggression that it creates in these youths and the physical toll that it takes is different than if you're telling a kid that's going to play baseball, what his life is going to be like. It's different than if some of these kids are amazing wrestlers. The physical toll that football takes on a body is just different. It's not comparable to any of the other sports.
Yeah.
There's a tennis brand
too. Yeah.
A black man founded Lacoste, and it's a tennis brand that still exists today. Its market shares are only increasing. A lot of people don't know that. Some of us that look like this can go play tennis and develop amazing things as well.
Man, even there's some golf brands that are now Eastside Golf. I'm a big fan of theirs. So when I lived in Atlanta and worked for Wilson, we had seen a lot of their events as an upstart very early in the process, but now they're one of those brands that's collaborated with Jordan Brand. It's collaborated with the PGA. They've done a lot of really good things in this space to open those doors. But to your point, to all of our conversation, I don't think we knew. I start with a quote. It's hard to believe what you can't see. So I think when you're able to visualize a lot of this, and social media has been very instrumental. It has its bad things, but it has been very instrumental in terms of positivity with creating awareness. So now you can go direct to the person that has the product or is the brand or is the personality. And I think that because there's been so many doors closed and we've had to be very strategic on how we got in the house, right now we're starting to see the impact of COVID. Everybody was living online. We had to create this personality and this digital footprint. So now we understand that, hey, I can make an Eastside Golf. I can be a running back academy. I could be a sports entertainment group. And I think for so long we just seen it as like these were the only ways to, play a sport or do a thing. But now we're seeing that it's not just playing and coaching. And I'll be completely honest, I had my aha, this is more than football moment when I was working for a marketing agency. I literally was there as an MC, helping to generate leads for State Farm, and we were at Jerry's World, and it's crazy. It's going crazy. The guys on the pedalway is going back, and I'm like, I've wanted to be the athlete for so long. I had no clue all of this was happening outside of the game. And these are businesses.
Yeah, bro.
Everybody's getting paid, and nobody's paying attention to the game. And to your point, I never knew marketing, we could be a minority marketing sports professional before I seen a Maverick Carter. Before I heard I couldn't be a black sports agent before Rich Paul. Before these guys that are now have these big celebrities because of the inception of the internet and social media.
Not to cut you off, but let me give you an example before we go on to, promoting the book. I remember I was watching the game, right? And there was a black mom and white mom, and I was sitting at the top. I'm just like my dad. I always sit in the top corner of the football games where nobody's at. And while the kids were playing, I seen the white mom. She was sitting back on a lawn chair. She was reading a book as the kids were out there at a camp. And then the black mom, she was all on the gate, yelling, screaming. You know how black moms do, And I remember, going down there because I was so intrigued by that whole scenario, right? And I asked the white mom, I said, I see you not, paying attention to your child. And she was like, you know what? This stuff doesn't really matter to me. She's like, yeah, he loves it. But she's like, you know what? He has the ability to be like a doctor, a lawyer. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what we're hoping for. That's what we're pushing for. So I go to the African-American mom and I asked her, I said, Mom, I see you out here screaming. I said, you embarrassing your child. I just had to make it funny. She was like, no, because what? We got to eat. We got to get it. And it's like in my head, and I hate to make this a cultural thing, a color thing, but it is what it is. You know what I mean? Like no kid should feel the pressure just because you made bad decisions. Like my child shouldn't have to feel like he has to be a millionaire just so he can get us up out of our situation because of the decisions I made. Yes, I know I made sacrifices, but that's a lot of pressure you put on a kid. And if a kid don't make it, what kind of depression that he feels. That's why a lot of these people are offing themselves. That's why a lot of these people are turning to drugs because they're trying to escape the harsh reality that they let their people down. And no kid should feel that. Kids shouldn't grow up that way. He should grow up, live his life. And if he can't take care of you, that's on you. You know what I mean? Like, so, that was a story that I always seen that intrigued me just about how we are pushing our kids. One mom sitting back, we don't need football. We're going to be a doctor, lawyer because we're going to be the ones,
It's still a sport to them.
Yeah,
it's not life. And that goes back to our earlier conversation, which we're not disagreeing, but we have a difference of perspective where I do believe at a certain point they need to be kids, bro. They need to be kids. We gotta be careful about when we're exposing them to the business of it, because in our community it's predatory. It is that mom, she's banking everything. She don't care what his grades look like. I guarantee she's not paying attention to his report cards. She's paying attention to how many minutes he played at the game. But that other mom, that mom with the fair skin tone, she's paying attention to his grades.
Yeah.
And what other things he likes, because she understands that this ain't his only way out. And that's why we just really got to be careful in this business. Because yes, 16 is the prime time, right? To 18 and going forward, where myself as a business as well, where I have to target athletes and we have to start having those conversations. But prior to that, like you said, they pee-wee and screaming at them because they ain't hitting hard enough.
You know, this South Florida.
Let me say this. I'm serious. But one person is thinking about a power move. The other person is gambling.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And when you're thinking about a power move takes time, right? So I can allow my child to be a kid, but he has to learn through that process. But by the time he turned 18, we got to turn this thing up. So he was able to have his childhood.
Exactly.
Sports, I get what he's saying. Like, if you want to make it, you want to be that guy. Like, bro, you got to grow up fast. Like, you do. You have to really understand what's going on. You got to pick up on this, pick up on that. So I understand both of y'all perspectives. But it's just like, man, one is just really just a chance. Ain't nothing for show. You can be a 5-star athlete, the best of the best. It doesn't mean that you're going to make it.
That's why we got to find that balance.
Yes.
Because one, yes, you got to grow up fast in this industry, but we already got to grow up fast because of our skin tone. We already got to be, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. She looking at that little boy playing, that's her man.
Yeah.
A lot of these moms treat their sons like their boyfriend.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, he the man of the house. He got to go somewhere and he got to pay these bills. That's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got it. So when the kids get on that field, man, they mind full of everything but football.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they're hitting them other players, they're hitting them players because it's stuff going on internally. And like you say, when they don't make it or don't go as far as they want to, their lives crumble.
Yes.
So how do we as a business or as businessmen create opportunities so that doesn't happen?
I think you got to change the coaches. You have to change the coaches because it's about just the unreal, uneducated men coaching these kids.
Yeah.
My coach
This is damn near my dad. I'm just being real.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of hurt, underdeveloped, unhealed men that's coaching these kids. And you see it. You see it because they don't know nothing else to tell them. They don't even know how to do conflict resolve within themselves. Just the other week, I just seen 2 coaches paid on the football field in front of kids. Like, you mean to tell me that you as grown men couldn't have no conflict resolve and not result to that? Since I couldn't step back and say, hey, I didn't like what you said. Like, y'all don't do that. It's like, that's where we're going wrong. It's the people who coaching our kids. But us as coaches who've been there, guys who've been to that level, a lot of us don't want to come back because a lot is toxic. You know, and it's like, how you gonna tell me? And I've been there. I know what I'm talking about. I know what to do. I know how to guide your son to the route that I think he should go. But y'all giving me so much conflict and so much toxicity. I don't even want to deal with it. I'd much rather just train my running backs, coach them that way, and disciple them that way, and then send them back. But I'm not stepping in that realm no more.
Yeah, I think you know, it is a development thing.
Yeah,
and we're definitely forced to grow up a lot sooner. And I think that even to football as a sport, it definitely teaches a lot of things about life and manhood and all those things. But I think even greater, it teaches you what you can do. Because there's a lot of times where you don't know what you can do. But through the power of the sport, man, I've traveled the world.
Yeah, man. Football.
And I don't think that I really understood like the impact of it until I was 23. That aha moment happened at 23. When I was going through it was just muscle memory, just kind of riding the bike. And then it happened like, oh, okay, I got to figure this out.
Yeah, buddy.
I got to figure this out. And if I didn't have mentors, if I didn't have former coaches, if I didn't have other men, my uncle and my cousins and my play uncles and all these people, men that actually took interest into me, then I don't think I would have ever been a portion of where I got. Right. So I know that it is alarming when you have the toxicity and kind of these environments that have not changed. But when you leave it, come back. When you know more, you should do more or behave differently.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, so meeting them where they are, being patient with them, because a lot of people take new knowledge as, you know, the plague or like, you know, coronavirus. So a lot of times, you know, one person was saying kung flu and another person was saying this is killing people.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of how you have to try to be patient with a person to get to that point where you can decipher which way you should go.
Absolutely. Well, Charles, man, I know we see we got the book over there. What did I sign? Can you give the viewers a little feedback or just kind of interest of what's going on in the book, man?
Yeah, so going back to this whole conversation, what did I just sign? First of all, just take a perspective of that opening title, right? And it's a consequence, and consequences aren't good or bad. They just are. So my whole thing is I'm trying to go from people listening and hearing me to understanding and comprehending me. And not only just me, but also, like I said, the rules of the American game: stocks, investing, real estate, insurance, trust, psychology of why we feel the way we feel, financial scams, and how to vet financial professionals, business professionals, people like us. How do I vet people like us? And clarity, like giving visual examples. I have over 40 plus, or at least over 30 plus visuals of making it, because we're visual, right? Most people are visual. So I also made visuals in here to make it so we go from listening and hearing me to understanding and comprehending. Because here's the thing, right? We are born looking like our circumstances, but we die looking like our choices. At the end of the day, to have a parent, to have parents, to have anybody that's a cherry on the top. Yes. That is not a prerequisite. I had to understand that. Yeah. Is that like the fact that I have a mom that cares about me and loves me, that is not a prerequisite in life. No. That is a blessing. Yes. The fact that you have anyone that cares about you is a blessing. That's not a prerequisite. But also keep in mind this: people who are in tough, terrible situations, nobody likes you, blah, 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 blah. There has been, if you do your research, there has been somebody in your exact situation and they won with it. Yes. Because guess what? At the end of the day, God has given us one beautiful thing: free will. Yep. And we have the free will to say, you know what? I want to turn my tragedy into a triumph. Yep. And then at the same time, we have the free will to turn our triumph into a tragedy. Because how many times, like I said, I went to rich private schools. I seen a bunch of white kid crash outs. Yeah. I hung with them, if I'm being honest, because you are who you surround yourself with, right? And sometimes circumstances make you feel like you have to do certain things. Like if I'm being really transparent, like I hung out with one kid because I was tired of taking the city bus. Yeah. So he got a car. And now we became cool. Yeah. And now we're doing dumb pranks and fucking sawgrass. Yeah. Sorry for my language. It's all good. Right? But I don't have to stay that way. At the end of the day, I have the choice and I have the permission from God to say, hey, if you want to change your circumstances, you're allowed to. And it takes work. Everything takes work. What I always hear, what you always see, it takes work to be great and it takes work to be bad.
Yes, it do. Yep.
So it's like, what work do you want to put in? Yeah. Because either way is going to be long, hard, and arduous. But what do you want? The pain of regret or the pain of triumph? Yeah, right.
And as I look at your book cover, that's like I see, I think it's dope because of the whole contrast of it. You got the contract and you got the hands in there. The hands got the watch, it got the rings, it got all this stuff, the materialistic stuff that we would look at a person and think that they got it all together, but the hands are shackled up in chains that he's signing a contract. And I think that is so profound, and I love that as a book cover, because just because you got all on the jewelry on a lot of that stuff is a cover up, it doesn't really equate to knowledge up here, so I love that, man. But last thing before we close out, what one message you want to tell the people, tell the world, get it off your chest? I'm gonna start off with you, J Money, and then we're gonna go down.
You can always change your circumstance. I think that as long as you keep going, keep waking up every day and try to behave and think differently, you can always change your circumstance.
Yeah. I think that no matter what you decide to do, if you keep at it, you'll make it to your destination. If I get up right now and I walk towards the beach, it might take me a little while, but eventually if I keep walking, I'm going to make it to the beach. Yep. And so I think that that's important to say. It may not be in the form that you desire it, but if you have a direction that you want to go in, just keep walking.
I would say that sports, success, is the starting point, not the finish line. And use sports as a vehicle to accelerate and be the nitrogen or the NOS, in your car, in your vehicle of life to help you accelerate further and faster. That's my main thing is use sports. Don't let sports use you. And at the end of the day, this is all a vehicle. And lastly, self-accountability, and self-realization and self-awareness. We have to look at ourselves. If we can't change nothing if you don't want to address what needs to be changed. If you keep pushing it back, trust me, look at older people and you'll see like the people who crash out and all that stuff, it's all because of regret built up that they never wanted to address and look in the mirror and face. So that's my main thing.
Absolutely. And my message, man, it's just time to grow up. It's time to start as a culture. It's just time to do things differently. It's time to get out of the whole hip hop phase mentality. It's time for us grown men, us grown coaches to start talking like adults and not talking like the kids. There's no reason why we should be addressing kids as bruh and my ninja. Like, no, like it's time to do things differently. If you're not seeing where the world is going right now, man, then you are absolutely blind. Like, I think, as a culture right now, like it's more important than ever for us just to change the mindset because other coaches are thinking about power. We're just thinking about the power move. Like it's different. The power play or the power is longevity. That's stuff that comes with time. But a lot of us is just thinking about the power play right now. And a lot of times that's just a gamble. A lot of us are hard rocking our life. Like that's how we living. And we shouldn't live like that. We need to build stability. We need to make sure that we bringing our young kids up and making sure that we teaching them the right way. Around all this cussing and carrying on. I'm not going to get too much into it, but it's just time for us to grow up, man. And all the other stuff is just getting old with kids fighting on the field, adults fighting on the field. Like, bro, this is just football. Like, and we got to understand, a lot of these kids don't know how to turn that off. They take what they do on the football field and they take it in the street. And then that's how you end up with violence. So that's my message to the world, man. It's just time to grow up. Gentlemen, I want to thank y'all for coming in, man. This is an awesome, awesome show. We dropped a lot of knowledge. Make sure y'all check out my man book, What Did I Sign? I love the cover. Got JD. Make sure y'all follow him. You know what I'm saying? We're going to tag everybody and reach out to these guys. Ask questions. If you want to get a suit made, my man right here. You got this suit on. If you need some representation, we got my man right here. So everybody's doing something. And we just want to educate our people. So we want to thank y'all for joining the Legacy Levels podcast. And we'll see you at the next interview. Peace.